Now we're going to look at the law of cosines. The law of cosines is another way to solve non-right triangles. And we learned that the law of sines could be used if you know two angles and the included side, two angles and the non-included side, or two sides and a non-included angle. The law of cosines can be used if you know all three sides, or if you know two sides and the included angle. There are different ways we can state the law of cosines. Really, there's three ways. If you're talking about triangle ABC, we normally just state one of them and move the letters around if it's in a different form. So the law of cosines, again, we're not going to prove it here, I'm just going to state it to you, is c squared, as in side c squared, equals side a squared plus b squared. Those are other two sides. Now we're not finished yet. This is just the Pythagorean theorem. Minus 2 times side A times side B times the cosine of angle C. Now, make sure you do the order of operations when you're doing any solving with these. 2ab is multiplied by the cosine of C, so we should never subtract 2ab from these first because it is connected to the cosine C. So be really careful with those. I'll try to point out when and where people make that mistake. Now, again, I said this could be written in two other ways, and really what we do is we swap A with C, or we swap B with C. So the other two variations might be A squared equals B squared plus C squared minus 2BC cosine of A. Notice that the side at the beginning and the angle at the end are the same letter, which means they're opposite each other. And you might be able to figure out what the last variation of this is. B squared equals side A squared plus side C squared minus 2AC cosine of B. So again, these are just two other variations that are pretty easy to figure out as long as you know the first one. So that is the law of cosines. If you know all three sides, you'll plug in for C, A, and B, and you'll solve for angle C. If you know two sides and an included angle, that's actually a nice one. You put the two sides and the included angle on the right side, and you can really easily find the other missing side. Down in our questions, we'll do number 5 and 6 because number 5 is a side, 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 and number 6 is a side angle side. So we'll get to hit both variations of that. When we solve a side, 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 it is helpful to find the largest angle first. And it actually has to do with, because we're going to use sine later on, law of sines. We start with the law of cosines, but we actually then use the law of sines. And it's best, if there's an obtuse angle, to find the obtuse angle first. So when doing law of cosines, when you know three sides, it is best to find the largest angle first, which is across from the longest side. So for number 5, angle A is going to be the largest angle, so it's best to find that first. So this is side A, 12 is side B, and 18 is side C. We want to find angle A, so that means side A has to come first. So we're going to use the form A squared equals B squared plus C squared minus 2AB, oops, no, that's wrong, 2BC cosine of A. Put a little times sign there, times the cosine of A. And now we plug in the three sides. So A is 28, so we have 28 squared equals B squared, which is 18 squared, plus 12 squared, minus 2 times 18 times 12 times the cosine of A. So let's start doing some of our Math here, 28 squared, we need to find what that is. That's 784. 18 squared, oops, wrong thing. 18 squared is 324. We know 12 squared is 144 minus 2 times 18 times 12 is 432 times the cosine of A. Here, from right after we do this step is where a lot of people make a mistake. A lot of people do 324 plus 144 minus 432. That is wrong. Very, very wrong. Because this negative 432 is multiplied times the cosine of A. So we can't subtract the 432. So we need to add, what we need to do is we need to do 324 plus 144, which is 468. So we have 784 equals 468 minus 432 times the cosine of A. We will go ahead and subtract 468 from both sides. And now it's just solving. So we have 784 minus 468. Probably don't really need a calculator for that. We get 316. Equals negative 432 times the cosine of A. Now we can get rid of the 432 by dividing by negative 432. So I'm typing that over here in my calculator. I'll show that we were doing that step. We're dividing by negative 432. So right now, again, we need to go to at least 4 decimal places, not 3, and definitely not 2, and definitely not 1 decimal place. And as I mentioned before, it's really best just to keep what you have in the calculator and use that. So we're going to say this is equal to the cosine of A. Well, how do we get rid of cosine? Well, we take the inverse cosine of both sides. Slide up a little bit here. Oh, I'm running into problem 7. So A equals, and on my calculator, I must do inverse cosine. So hit the second button, inverse cosine of my previous answer. And that gives me 137 degrees. It's actually 0.0 degrees. So angle A took us a while, but we found that that was 137.0 degrees. Now that we have one of the angles, we now go to law of sines and find, well, you still could use law of cosines, but I usually go back to law of sines because I think it's a little bit easier. Because now we have an angle and side that are across from each other that we know. And if we do that, we can then find, like we have all 3 sides, we can then find another angle over here. So let's do that. Let's find angle B. So since we're finding an angle, when we talked about law of sines, we're finding an angle. We want to put the angles on top. So I said we were going to find angle B. So let's do sine of B over side B equals, we have to use sine of A over side A because those are the pair that we know. So we are trying to find angle B, so sine of angle B over side B, which is 12, equals sine of 137.0 over 28. Looks like we'll be multiplying both sides by 12 here. Again, I'm maybe writing more than I need to. I probably could just plug some of it in my calculator now, but I'm going to write this. I often put the 12 first because I don't want to get it mixed up into my sine of 137. So it's 12 times the sine of 137 over 28. I'll bring my calculator back out here. And notice I still have this 137 in my calculator, so I'm just going to use that. when I calculate this, when I type this in. So sine of b equals 12 times my previous answer, and then divided by, that's wrong, not times my previous answer, times the sine of my previous answer, divided by 28. And we get 0.2922. Go to at least 4 decimal places, not 3, not 2, and definitely not 1. So now we do the inverse sine of both sides. And we get b equals, I'll do the inverse sine of my previous answer, which gives me 17.0 degrees. So let's see, we found angle A, we just found angle B, and it will be really easy to find angle C because we'll take our 137 degrees from angle A plus 17 degrees from angle B. We get 154, and then 180 minus 154 gives us, 26 degrees. So angle C equals 26 degrees. And we found all 3 angles. So there's an example of when we knew all 3 sides, and we can find the 3 missing angles. All right, let's move on over to number 6, which is when we know 2 sides and included angle. We're still going to use the law of cosines. And what we need to do is since we have angle C, we need to find side C first. This 29 down here, that's side A, and this one is side B. And we need to find side C. So when we're finding side C, we start with C squared. So we know angle C, so we have to find side C. So C squared equals A squared plus B squared minus 2AB cosine of C. That's the formula we're using. We will now plug in. So C squared equals A squared, which is 29 squared, plus B squared. Oops, I almost wrote B. Plus 21 squared minus 2 times 29 times 21 times the cosine of 132. Now, this is really nice because we can actually just type this thing right into our calculator to find C squared. And then we'll take the square root. Let's type it all in. 29 squared plus 21 squared minus 2 times 29 times 21 times the cosine of 132. Hit enter. We get 2097. Basically 0.0. We don't have to go to 4 decimal places here. That's only when we're going to work with trig, and we already finished up working with trig. So then we take the square root of both sides. So I'm going to take the square root of my previous answer, and that gives me 45. So C, side C is 45.8 meters. Now that I've done that, I can go back to the law of sines because now I know a pair. I have side C and angle C. And now we just get to choose. Let's say, so we have to find angle A and angle B. Let's say we're going to find angle A. Since we're finding angle A, we want to put the angle on the top. So sine of A over side A equals, and we have to use C, because we know both angle C and side C, so we'll do sine of C over C, and then we'll plug in. Sine of A, we're trying to find angle A, over side A, which is 29, equals sine of C, which is 132, over 45.8. And now we're solving. Multiply both sides by 29. Sine of A, we can put this over 1, equals 49, times the sine of 132, over, oh, not 49, 29. 29 times the sine of 132 over 45.8. Put that in our calculator. 29 times the sine of 132, close parentheses, divided by, we really could just do divided by our previous answer. I didn't close the parentheses like I said I was going to. So close parentheses, divided by the previous answer. That gets us sine of A equals 0.47. But we don't stop there. We go to 4 decimal places, 0.4706. At least 4 decimal places. And then now we can take the inverse sine of both sides. So inverse sine of our previous answer, we get angle A is 28.1. So our answer, we can round to the nearest tenth, as you can barely see at the top left of our screen, 28.1. And now that we know angle C, we were given it to start with, and so angle C and angle A, we can easily find angle B. So let's add those up. 132 plus 28.1 and subtract from 180. We get 19.9 degrees. So angle C, sorry, not angle C, angle B equals 19.9. And we have our 3 things we needed to find. Angle A, angle B, and side C. A lot of times people will write them back in here. So angle A was 45.8 and angle B was 19.9. Oh, not 45.8. That is wrong. That was our side. So that was 28.1. And we already put side C on there. And that's using the law of cosines.